Tammy, is there any way we can ask Ms. Lemay about the possibility of Zoom hours? Eric? And then I just go like this? Okay. That's fine. Okay. Is this working? Okay. Testing. Okay.
Program committee meeting Tuesday, November 28, 2023. For the record, 9:34 a.m. The chair will seek approval of the agenda as printed unless there are any amendments.
So move.
So we have a motion
Second.
and we have a second. Madam Counsel, since this is just really a workshop, do we need to take a vote for the approval of this agenda, or how should we proceed?
So if you're treating it as a workshop, then you would take no action. There would be no votes today.
Okay, absolutely. Well, I think that's all it is. That's in proper protocol to go through the workshop and then go to the board meeting for all
wouldn't-
action items.
You wouldn't be able to vote for a recommendation to the board if you're treating it as a workshop versus a committee meeting.
What's the desire of the committee? For me, I'm satisfied with the workshop and taking it to the board because this is only 4 people representing. Unless there's further discussion from y'all.
If we treat it as a workshop, does that mean we will take all items back to the
Correct.
full board?
If you're treating it as a workshop, then you wouldn't have any votes today or take any formal action today. You would just hear from the participants, receive the information, and then all items would go to the full board.
Mr. Superintendent, I think that then we would take a staff would bring their recommendation back to the full board, correct, counsel?
Correct.
Yeah, but we would hear and workshop it today and ask any questions that we have, and staff would bring a recommendation back to the board.
Correct.
Legally, can we do that, though, because it's advertised as a committee meeting instead of a workshop?
Yeah, I don't know of any prohibition from conducting the meeting itself as a workshop. You just would not be allowed to take any formal action.
I'm comfortable with that.
Okay. So we'll move right into public comment with that. Our first speaker, Luis Gomez.
Good morning. Thank you for having me. My name is Luis Gomez Jr. I was formerly on the city council in Century, Florida. I am now the mayor of Century. And I'm here to advocate for the town of Century and the program that Dr. Griffin and the Urban League has brought to the town of Century. I just want to give a little quick history and go ahead and say what I have to say and hope that it makes a difference. Children's Trust approached the council a few months, well, last year actually, and they had a program that would benefit urban, not just urban, but any school or any after-school program that could help any community that was blighted. So Century, they did the presentation at the city council meeting, and no one seemed to follow it up. So I reached out to Dr. Griffin, who had done different programs such as job fairs and such up in Century. She reached out to the Children's Trust and received a grant for our community. But now it seems that some protocol has not been followed or whatever the case may be. And I just want to advocate for the town of Century because I saw a lot of articles written here lately that I don't really think they understand the demographics in Century or the way the stories have been written. It doesn't represent what the program actually brings to the town of Century. See, if you were in Pensacola and you took away a program such as this, it's not a big deal because the community has a choice to go other places to seek these services for the children of the community. And as far as I was concerned, Children's Trust wanted to help the children of all communities. If you take this program away from Century, you're not taking away one of the programs in Century. You're taking away the only program in Century. And I would invite anyone that wants to come to Century. My doors are open door policy. I can show you around in Century. We need this program to remain in Century. I know that it might be out of compliance a little bit.
Mr. Councilman, would you begin to wrap it up?
Okay,
3 minutes
but
is almost up.
under the circumstances, this program is the only educational program in the town of Century. And we actually need it to stay in Century. It'd be devastating to lose this program. And it also offers lunch programs for the kids. And that's all I have to say. Just please keep it there.
Thank you, Mr. Gomez. Next speaker will be John Rigsby.
Good morning. My name is John Rigsby, and I'm the president and co-founder of the Urban Development Center. Thank you so much for having us. I just want to speak very briefly about Youth First Century. We've heard a lot of vitriol, a lot of very negative comments about a program that has more substance and value than most people really understand. And I understand that because most people have never been to Century. They don't take that 45-minute up and the 45-minute back, and I understand that. But we're thankful to the town of Century. We're thankful to the mayor of Century, both past and present.
Mr.
We're
Rigsby,
thankful.
I don't mean to cut you off, speaker, but any of the items in the workshop that you represent, you're going to get an opportunity to speak on your item.
Yes, sir.
when it
Yes, sir.
comes up.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. But I want to just say this just very briefly. We need to do our due diligence in the town of Century. We need to continue to work on the behalf of all children in the town of Century, remembering that children that are 7, 8, 9, and 10 will someday be 11, 12, 13, and 14. Communication skills, listening skills, and all the other elements that we've brought to Century are a part of the development of children, period. Every community needs a Youth First Century. So the question was asked, who needs a Youth First Century program? Every community needs a Youth First Century program. Thank you, Louis.
Thanks, Mr. Riggs. I certainly appreciate it. I certainly want to acknowledge and thank our staff, Tammy and Kim, for spending a lot of time on this. This was probably more information than I think the committee even was seeking. So thank y'all for getting that. So at this time, Kim, we're going to turn it over to you for your program report.
Yes, thank you, and good morning. You have several items at your tables, and these have all been posted online 7 days in advance. I just wanted to start by pointing out the out-of-school time report, where a lot of the documentation up for discussion in this workshop can be found, especially on pages 10 and 11. In the overview, I'm sure some of you had a chance to read it, but really we wanted to highlight that this has all happened since March. ECT has invested, or at least made a commitment to invest, over $5 million in 19 providers, many of whom have representatives in the room today, if not all of them. It's a mixture of brand new programs, just brand new, starting, never existed before, scaling programs that are highly effective to new parts of our community, and then the third category would be making high quality after-school and summer programs newly available for free to hundreds of families for the first time. So I think it would be great to just acknowledge the hard work of so many of the providers and what they're doing across Escambia County. I think I speak for all of us that we want to applaud them for doing this hard work and stepping into the void and serving some of the most vulnerable kids in our community, as you can see from some of the address data. You are all here today to discuss and consider contract renewals, and that is this Year 2 funding request packet. You'll see our logo and our hands on everything, but this is the one. We have also compiled data on all 19 contracts with a caveat that we can only measure what we receive and that we're only looking at services rendered since the contract started and services began. So you'll see those dates in that detail. All contracts were signed between March and April. And on pages 7 and 8, in parentheses, you can see the actual date that services started in our system. So for example, it's always going to be alphabetical. So we got Boys and Girls Club at the top, started on March 27th. And that's how to read those pages 7 and 8. A lot of hard work went into this report. We have an awesome team. But we also really thank the board for investing in our data system. I know you all remember making that decision a year ago to spend $50,000 on SAMUS, and I think it's really paying off. And of course, supporting our staff, and as we all know, we all take outcomes seriously, and we're all here to make a difference in the lives of children. The OST programs up for discussion today are our single largest investment portfolio. It's about half of our annual ad valorem. So of the 19 contracts on pages 10 and 11, you can see how we sort of broke them down. What were their year 1 awards? What was their original request for year 2? What is the revised request for year 2? And do we recommend them for renewal? So you'll see the green check marks represent 14 of the providers. They're clearly on track to meet their original obligations, including dosage minimums and measurable outcomes. And we don't have any concerns or questions about renewing these 14 for a second year.
So, okay, you had a question? Okay, go ahead.
Based on information submitted by the providers by the November 15th deadline, we have identified 5 contracts that warrant further discussion. 2 of these 5 are not currently on track to meet their contracted outcomes, as you can see on page 10. And they're identified by yellow triangles in the renewal column.
Kim, can we do this? Can we take those 5 and have you an opportunity to present and give them a time to rebuttal? And I do have a concern as I'm looking on the 2-year renewal, since this is kind of a workshop. And one of the alarming things that have stood out to me, and even on those that we approved, is, and sometimes in my opinion, a disproportionate amount of money just is really being paid on administrative staff rather than direct services. And so it's not a voting thing today, but if people are bringing that back, I can just tell you I'm not going to vote for it. And I'm going to advocate not to vote for it because it's called the Children Trust. It's not an economic job creation to create jobs for people. And when we look at some of these numbers, even on the people that are meeting the dosage and have turned everything in, it's a disproportionate amount of money that's been paid on salaries, and it does not really meet the nonprofit guideline for the percentage of your revenue that should be paid on staffing. So I just wanted to note that through all of them, and that's a blanket statement, and I hope that that's addressed before it's brought back to the full board. But if we could, Dr. Northrup, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make and expand on those, if I may. A few comments here to address all of you all, and we thank you all for not only the service and the programs you represent, but taking your time to come down here and work with us so that we can do our jobs better. But a couple of comments and points I would like to stress along the line of Commissioner May. One is to remind everybody that rather than monies that have been volunteered, such as an organization such as Impact 100 or those types of organizations, what we are looking after are public taxpayer funds, and that we, as the board, serve as stewards of those public funds, and we have a responsibility of showing a return on investment to the taxpayers for these dollars, which are intended to go for improving the lives of children in Escambia County. And that is one of the things we're driven by. Another point to make is that rather than grants, again, such as Impact 100 and a number of other very beneficial organizations in town, this is funding. It is funding to provide for contracted services, which all of these organizations have contracted with the board, and we are going to reimburse for those contracted services based on the provision of the delivery of services that were contracted for. And those will be looked at based on measurable outcome data, not just what might happen or that type of thing, but we are charged with looking at what actually was provided in contrast or looking at the contracts that were signed with these various organizations. I want to remind everyone as well that as a board, it was our intent that all of the organizations, once a contract was entered into with them, was that they would all succeed and that they would all provide the services required. That is what we were hoping for. That is what the trust was developed for and things. And it was the staff, again, recognizing them and giving kudos to them, have spent an inordinate amount of time working with members of various organizations, some of them more time spent than others, but nonetheless being there to support them with the intent, again, of them being successful. And I think the results show that 14 of the 19 programs that we contracted with are indeed on track and indeed are succeeding and are meeting their goals. And that it is the 5 others that we have concerns about and that we want to look at, but that we again have responsibility to the taxpayers whose dollars we are expending to try to ensure that these programs are either meeting the goals and outlines that they contracted for in the contracts that they developed. They came to us saying, here's what we will do, here's what we can provide, etc. And that if that is taking place, then things are good. And if it is not taking place, then we have an obligation and a responsibility to the taxpayers of Escambia County to say that we either have to make some significant revisions and or we need to say that, I'm sorry, this is not going to work. Maybe in the future you all can reapply to another request for proposals or that type of thing. But again, we are up here sitting in a bit of a hot seat, very privileged to do so, but nonetheless looking after taxpayers' dollars and with the intent of getting as much positive impact on the lives of children as we can. And I hope and think that that's what we are all here to do. So we're all on the same page, and more importantly, we're all on the same team. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Norton, and to my colleagues. If you have questions as you review the information that staff's provided, I think that every organization is represented. So not only those 5, but if you have questions for any organization, today would probably be today to get an explanation. So when it's before the full board, we'll be able to expedite it. Kim, I did talk with the Children's Theater, and many of them have traveled far, and I've told them that we would present them first so we could have them out the way. So if Children's Theater wants to be here, Kim, I'll let you go ahead and present. Dr. Norton.
So the first item for Children's Theater would be, I would think, the discussion item that was from the board meeting last week.
Okay.
So the program change requests. Do you all need Tammy to give a refresher on what those were?
Yeah, Tammy, why don't you go ahead and give us a little 2-minute, and then we'll get them rebuttal. It should be, what was your question, madam?
Okay, we may need 10 minutes. I'll put you on speaker. I'll let you know when you're needed.
Go ahead, Ms. Abrams.
Okay, so what the Children's Theater has requested in their program change is a change of timing. So basically, the program was supposed to go all the way through February, and they have finished their program at the end of September, and a budget amendment so that they could move from line item to line item in their budget. It was more than the 10%, so we needed your guys' approval to adjust that.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I had one
Oh,
question.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
One chair for
Go ahead,
Ms.
Mr.
Abrams.
Superintendent.
Did the Children's Theater expend more money than had been allocated to them prior to today?
They did submit reimbursement for slightly more. I sent it back and had them resubmit with the maximum of their budget amount.
That's what I thought I remembered. So I will have a question for Mr. Dozier once he has the opportunity to tell us everything he wants to tell us.
But tell me, but we didn't pay more than the amount, right? It was just submitted, correct?
No, and at this moment, we have about close to $30,000 that we owe, that is due to them, but hasn't been paid because we need to adjust their budget line items so that we're not, they've overspent salaries by $20,000 from what's budgeted. So if we adjust their line item, they're moving it out of food up to salaries.
I just want to make sure Jeff Cantor is hearing. He's our account manager, and I hope you can use the mic a little louder. Jeff, you know, Tammy was just mentioning that we were $20,000 over on salaries, and that there were some line items that were over budget. So the reimbursement amounts that are due to us are still pending, if I said it right. Just for a little bit of clarification, we basically had 5 items that were over line item budgets. Jeff will clarify. For example, we took out of meal and gave it to transportation. We took out of, Jeff will know the details, but basically we stayed entirely.
Excuse me 1 second.
Yes, sir.
Just for protocol, in fairness, I'm going to limit these to 5 to 7 minutes per organization because
Thank you, sir.
If not, then we're going to find ourselves here for 5 hours. So, you know, we're going to try to stay within that time. But go right ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, that's great. If we can just do a little bit of State of the Union, we'll be short and sweet. We practiced, we've written it down so we don't take up your time. And then we are more than happy to answer any questions about the budget line items. I know that we went $700 over budget and we took it out.
I just wanted to let you know who we are. I'm Eric Dozier. I'm the Director of Equity and Community Engagement. I'm also the musical director for Children's Theater Company. And when we were present last week, we were hoping that we would be able to have our Executive Director, Mayor Mansouri, and our Grant Manager, Jeff Cantor, kind of pipe in. We were all traveling and had a couple of losses in the family. So we're very grateful that we have the people here that can answer your questions that have been handling the books. I do want to say this because, I was walking out of the house this morning and I saw my tax bill and I saw Escambia Children's Trust on it. And, I chuckled a little bit because it made me feel very, very proud, that I was contributing to this overall project in the city because I have such a heart for working with children and have done so for most of the years of my life since graduating from college. And we came here because of our community mobilization grant that we had partnered with the NEA and a number of organizations to bring Henry Box Brown the musical here. And as part of that, we were establishing a chapter of children's theater. But one of the things I want to say about that, because I know a lot of questions are coming up about us not really being locally rooted. Prior to even coming here, there were folks from Pensacola that came and vetted our program in Flint, Michigan, and in Jackson. And this was after I moved here. And we always consult with our national board and even local folks to make sure that there's even a possibility for a fit. You know, because, you know, we hold post-show workshops to, and talk back so that we can see if there are any people in the community that want to partner and join with us in this work. And then we came here, we ended up partnering with a local school, Dixon School. You all know the school, fabulous place. I work with them intimately and still very, very close there. And that was the first place that I performed here in Pensacola in 2019. And all of that love that I saw for children, all of that drew me here to the point to where I now have a tax bill where my property is being taxed to go to programming for these children here. And the reason I bring that up is that prior to even considering asking for money from the Escambia Children's Trust, we came here and made a $200,000 investment in Pensacola. And so we are invested in the return on that investment and also the return on your investment. And we do realize that there have been some misunderstandings along the way. And but in the spirit of the children, in the spirit and on behalf of our taxpayers, one of which I am one, we really want to work everything out and go forward and continue to do our work here in partnership with ECT and and the board and the people of Pensacola. So I'm going to introduce you to Mayor Mansouri, who is our executive director. She's the one that signs the contracts, and she has answers to your questions. And I'll give her a minute just to say what she needs to say.
Thank you, everyone. I am the executive director, but you have a board of directors right here in Pensacola. And before we decided to embark on this endeavor with the Children's Theater's Henry Box Brown endeavor and the $200,000 of cash that became our way of assessing our need here, we formed a board of directors. So this company is owned, grown, and operated by a local board. And as a national organization, that's the mandate of our National Board of Trustees, that we do not have a top-to-bottom way of doing things, but a bottom-up. Just wanted to also say that I am the executive artistic director of the Children's Theater Company over 30 years. Together with Mr. Doja, I wrote, produced, trained, recruited, showcased, accompanied the Pensacola Theater Camp all through the year and was here full-time for the full immersion summer theater camp on campus, and I never cashed any of my checks, donated back every penny of my salary, and even advanced $16,000 of my personal funds to ensure the monthly cash flow crisis that we faced and still face. No one's fault. We know this was a growing pain. We're here to learn. Our company is growing and learning. I come to you this morning with a gratitude I think is deserving of saying, because I see the rumor mill, it's getting all the way to New York and Flint. We're deeply grateful. This gathering is essentially due to the sacrificial, selfless, tireless service of not only our own staff and volunteers, but actually the ECT staff, which has dwindled. And they still serve, and they still help, and they still push through, and they still encourage. In our minds, we're here because everyone who has been in touch with our program, our organization has stretched itself beyond capacity and reason, and that's why we're here. We have been running fast since March and April. We have not looked back for a second. We wanted to deliver the number one thing in that contract, which said ECT has the right to withhold or to suspend payment if the provider has not met the performance measures of this agreement. And we were going to deliver on those performance measures because we've done it for 30 years, in state, out of state, every state. So that's what we saw. We saw people that were willing to help total strangers and get out there and help us. The sheer dedication of all who have assisted us in this endeavor is humbling. And while no one on the ECT staff or this board was able to attend a single program, a single rehearsal, a sold-out show, standing room only performances, because like all of us, they've been wearing multiple hats, we cannot in good faith let anyone leave with the impression that the ECT staff has not been the invisible lifeline to ensure our success, because the rumors are getting out to us. Literally, with one call to one of your staff members, when we lost our partnership with Dixon, which devastated every single investment we made in this community for 2 years, in one phone call, through a couple of your staff members right here, we called CAYS, and we had 108 parents, and we called every single parent one by one, phone by phone, door to door, until we recruited 93 kids. Yes, we failed getting 200 kids, but do you all know what happens in May in Pensacola? I didn't. Turns out the school's shut down. Every school we called said, sorry, we're out, we're gone. And we're like, well, that doesn't matter. When is summer school over? Oh, June 27th? Great. We start July 19th. And by June 27th, we had 93 kids. It was a miracle. And I think you should know that that was by the sheer will of our organization and your staff. So in a brief nutshell, believe it or not, there's a brief. There are two extenuating circumstances that no one bargained for, that should have and could have disrupted, that did disrupt our 2-year commitment. And we saw that it worked out. We look back, but it was just, we had eyes on the prize and we didn't see it happening. The first of our two extenuating circumstances, the time of the award of the ECT contract, which was March and April. So by the time we had new staff, couldn't use the Dixon staff, couldn't use the Dixon kids, couldn't use the Dixon facility, couldn't use the Dixon bus. Every single logistic had to be rethought, rewired after 2 years of engaging families, communities, relationships. And by the way, teaching 3-act musicals is not easy to do in 11 camp days. We increased it to 20, then we increased it to 30. We're guilty of increasing and over-delivering on the number of days of our service. And yes, we exhausted those funds because we were essentially a startup from scratch. The second extenuating was an unexpected, unplanned, unintentional discontinuation of partnership with Dixon due to conflict of interest. So the first was when the contract was awarded, March. By the time we got going, it was April. And the second was losing a partnership with Dixon, which meant our 2-year investment of time, 76 students, highest possible level of delivery, the budget, everything had to be about succeeding. So, sorry, did you have your hand up? By the time we signed the contract in March, we were going in April. We were doing shows at Pensacola State College, Splash City. We were at Agape. We were at the EPA. We performed, we recruited, we met, we saw the community. We built a new community. What a miracle. Thank God it happened. There's victory in adversity. But it meant that this little organization had to recruit from scratch and train everyone, not in Annie the musical, but in 3 academic-based musicals about the history of women, and the kids had to memorize 3 books. This is not your usual musical. I'm wrapping it up. We had to ensure the success of all our investments and sacrifice, over-delivering sessions. We now have for you, if it's the right time or not, we'll hand it to you and you can decide.
Yeah, if you just started wrapping it up for us,
sir,
please.
got it. We got our impact reports. Eric, if you could hand it to them, and maybe somebody over there can get with this other one. These are 83 evaluations collected by phone and by QR code from every single parent who has engaged with our program. We didn't do this in time for this meeting. This is part of our DNA. It's called reflection upon action. And it's called action upon reflection. We do mid-season evaluation, end-of-season evaluations. We take it from parents, we take it from kids, we take it from staff, we take it from educators. The impact is written in every word of those parents, and we would love to have a chance to correct our communication gap and our huge learning curve of learning how to communicate receipts and invoices.
I certainly appreciate it, and I hate to cut you off.
This is my point. We want our money more than anyone.
Okay.
And we didn't get to do it because we were learning how to produce our invoices. Thank you.
Thank you. And you can stay there.
Thank you.
And hit me on the time when we get to 7 minutes from here on out, because we're setting that. Staff, board, they're here. If there are any questions, and Toy, I think I'll start with you if you had questions.
I will repeat it so Jeff can hear it.
So I'm looking at the report, and it says y'all had 7,000 staff hours, but you only saw the kids for 20 sessions. So if you were supposed to do 35 sessions, how did that happen with 20 sessions?
Thank you for allowing us to clarify. We projected 20 sessions based on the idea of returning students who knew our musicals. When we saw 93 new faces who didn't know how to say their names, we had to extend and add on sessions. So we added on double days, morning, afternoon sessions. We added to the 20 another 14 sessions. And we did so by adding days and adding double dose. Turns out SAMIS does not take a morning shift and an evening shift.
Yeah,
So
and
we
that-
did.
and that's because a lot of our programs that see
Sure.
the kid in the same.
Of course.
Like, see the kid in the same day, that's one day, like, that's
Yeah.
not 2 days.
We
Did you-
deliver 2 meals and set up 2 sessions.
And a lot of our programs do that. Boys and Girls Club sees the kids all day in the summer, and that's still one session.
I see. Well, ours cannot be counted as one because 4-hour rehearsals, depending on the age group, has to really
And
put
did
the
y'all
kid
come,
first.
did y'all come to the board and ask us before you changed that?
And we believed that the mechanism to report was the quarterly report, which says what were your changes, what were your challenges, what were your solutions. And I do regret that we did not have regular intended check-ins. We should have asked, is this protocol? We thought you make sure that if you've come up with a surplus in food, you put that money in transportation. And that's what started to happen. We saw ways we could make sure we stayed
So
on
the
budget.
kids would come in the morning, and then they would go home and come back?
No, the bus drivers would come back at 6:30, 7 o'clock.
No, I'm saying for one session, or for 2 sessions, did they come in the morning, go home, and then come back, or did you
No,
keep
they
them?
had to stay, and some of them, depending on transportation, had to stay.
But do you understand why that seems like a one-day program?
Yeah, well, our dosages were very calculated based on 30 years of 4-hour rehearsal blocks. So we gave them a
But
2-hour.
I'm saying if they're there for one day, that's one, do you understand
It's not
why?
one dosage because you don't know our programs, programmatic and pedagogical needs. But I will say this, they took a 2-hour break because we couldn't afford taking them home and bringing them back. So we made sure there was pizza and a dinner break and there was real like union breaks. We are a union organization through other avenues of our work, so we have to regard people's time and energy. But dosages are based on our pedagogy, not some random
But we
standard.
don't, but that's not what was in the contract.
I understand that the contract had dosages based on 20, and we're saying we put the kids first. That 30 sessions make these kids feel good because they were showing us progress. They were showing us impact. Their parents were begging for more. And
I understand that,
Yeah.
but I'm just saying,
Yes.
based on the,
Yes.
if they were there for one day, that's one session.
When we calculate dosages, we calculate a 4-hour meeting, a 4-hour gathering, and I definitely understand what you're saying. I just want to clarify. In our mind, we consider a dosage to be 4 hours because through a 4-hour period, on a normal day, we rotate our 3 age groups, group 1, group 2, group 3, through music, art, dance, and drama. And if we add extra rehearsals, we add them in 4-hour blocks because that's what we consider dosage. So we do understand, where the misunderstanding could come in, but it is a separate class that we are offering.
And in the,
And budget-wise, ma'am, may I
hold on,
please-
may I ask a question?
Sorry.
In the grant, whenever you guys wrote the grant, is it somewhere in the grant saying that a dosage is 4 hours?
Yes, ma'am, it absolutely says that. And also, please note that we had to pay our staff to stay extra. So it actually had an economic stretch, and this is where we went wrong, right? So we were going over budget, realizing we're paying the staff for their extra time, but we still stayed in the budget, but we took out surplus from one to the other. So yes, we are a 4-hour program because it's designed around the kids' ability to succeed. And
But you didn't ask for approval before you
we
did the
certainly did
extra hour.
not pre-approve it. We assumed that if we report our challenges and changes in the quarterly report, that's where the mechanism is placed. We also were told that there would be check-ins and there would be site visits. And
But do you understand what the concern is?
I certainly do. I certainly
Because
do.
I was the grants chair.
Yeah.
If you tell us that you're going to do a program for a year and you do the program for,
8 months.
from, the
March to-
program ran from July 15th to September 23rd,
Ma-
correct?
These are all part of the misinformation that we were not able to convey. Right away, when we started billing in March, we got a
But
call
I'm
from-
asking, so the program, you saw the kids, right now, you saw the kids from July 15th to September 25th,
September 23rd.
23rd.
And where we wanted to correct from day one, and it was lost in translation, lots of changes and lots of...
But do you understand?
I
you
do
see where
understand,
the
but
concern is?
this is the guilty with an explanation. We said right away in March, and we met Tammy Greer and the team about it, that our program starts with performances by kids in March.
But
I understand it's not
I know,
part of the
what
dosages.
My question for you is,
I'm
so
with you.
this is an out-of-school time.
Yeah.
And if you saw somebody from July 15th to September 23rd.
30 times.
For 20 days.
We were not able to put it in
20
SAMIS. I have a
days.
spreadsheet for you if you
Yes.
want to see it, with
20
all the
days.
attendance.
But this is an out-of-school time, that's.
Out
and
of
it's
school time, 30 sessions.
20 days.
30 dosages.
And you said you would see 200 kids, and you saw?
We saw 93 kids, 88 finished it, and they had 30 sessions, dosages based
So
on
all 88 kids went to all 30 sessions?
between 78 and 88 kids went to all 30 sessions. Yes, ma'am.
20 sessions?
How many?
20 days?
30 dosages.
For how many days?
Some, I would say between 25 and 30 days, because some were double dosed and some were add-on days. And we have it all documented. We're used to documenting attendance because we have other people that we have to answer to. So I totally understand that we started billing in March, and someone called us and said, how can you have a program that doesn't start till July, billing in March? Simple answer. We work with children as part of the learning, attracting, and recruiting, and we had to start from scratch. We are a startup, and we had startup costs. What I would assure this board is that we don't plan on spending that kind of money next year, because now we have 93 kids, and we think 80 of them will come back, and 40 of them will bring friends. We know some of these costs are one-time costs.
Do you have any more questions, Ms. Wood?
I hope that you know
No,
that
sir,
that-
that's all for me. Thank you.
Okay. So, one point, it may be very well justified in probably remediation and getting kids ready. You made a statement that caught me, that these kids couldn't say their name when they came in. And so, I mean, what's the clarification for that? Is that they needed remediation, or they?
No, meaning that some of them were so drastically shy
Okay.
and hadn't really learned to express themselves in public. And so part of our mandate is to really teach them how to use their voices. So we, in our mission statement, it says we use theater as a tool for moral reasoning. So helping them to speak, think, and use acting, dancing, music to become more articulate, to give them a language so that they can explain what is happening in their world.
So remediation on their public speaking, not educational-wise, just coming out of their shyness.
Educational-wise, we are based on state standards in language arts,
And
social
literacy.
studies, theater, and literacy. So literally, we have third-party evaluations looking at children's vocabulary, and 87...
So my question would
Yeah.
be, did you have to go back and do remediation for that? And I mean, that's very
It's part of our
justifiable.
pedagogy to really, and this is a great question because it speaks to why we started at Dixon 2 years ago with small doses. So we don't throw a whole musical at them. We start with one quote from a famous peacemaker and we build. So it's a scaffolded learning. So it's not, they can't see the anatomy. Somebody said we deliver broccoli under delicious goo. The broccoli is the lesson plan. It's broken down through theater increments. We had to do this with 93 new kids.
So,
Not- yeah.
so my question is, when you faced that challenge, was there communication with staff and saying this is one of the obstacles that we're facing in the
If
challenge?
there was one thing we could go back and do is make sure we build in check-ins with the staff. We were all running so fast, we didn't think anyone cared to know, just get it done. It's a big mistake. And we know that there was startup.
Well, I can't speak for anybody, but no, I care, because I care about the children.
Well,
so, yeah.
they wanted to know we were getting to the finish line, eyes on the prize, and we wanted to impress everyone instead of check in with everyone.
Right, I understand.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I don't think you're going to find anybody who just wants to count jelly beans. I mean, we want to make sure that children are taken care of. Council Wyatt?
Jeff, sorry, was there a question?
I'm just going down the line and letting each one of my colleagues have their time.
Jeff is our account manager. He has a 30-second statement about our invoices and their delay. Are you ready, Jeff?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, it's very impromptu. Go ahead.
Sure. First, I just want to say thanks for giving me the chance to speak. And I know that at the last meeting, there were many questions raised, one of which was the timing of our submitting our invoices. And trust me, as Children's Theater companies fronting the cost of all our expenses, our goal was to get things turned in a timely manner and to be reimbursed as quickly as possible. I prepared a handout, which Mayor has in the information she gave you there, that's going to detail the growing pains we encountered, which led from our first submission being on time to having to turn in a month and a half worth of invoices at the deadline. We face challenges not only in submitting our reimbursement requests, but also in being given new forms to use along the way, as well as being asked for clarification and justification for certain expenses throughout the process. And I feel now we have a better understanding of the needs of the staff and will be better prepared for the future. And I would honestly welcome any meetings the staff wishes to have to clear up any unanswered questions. And when you look at the handout that you'll be given, you'll see a chronology that details every submission we made to ECT. And I won't bore you by reading through every line, but you'll clearly see that the numerous steps we went through after submitting our March request on April 19th until it was finally approved on June 12th. The narrative that then continues and shows how there were more steps we were given for reporting, which led to further delays, but it will also show how we truly felt we were partnering with the staff of ECT to ensure that we got them all the information they would need to be able to clearly verify for the taxpayers and the board how our grant money was being used to benefit our students and the people of Escambia County.
Jeff, can you tell me the 5 items that we were over budget on?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. In all fairness, I can't. I have to let her go along with her questions. Go ahead.
So my name is Stephanie White, and thank you so much. I love the idea of theater, of dance, of art, of teaching these kids. That's great, and these kids need that. There's several organizations that in this who receive money from out of school time for the same thing. My concern is the number of staff. There's 28 staff. I know they're not all at the same time, and the amount of hours. In March, one person worked 195 hours.
Great.
And then another person worked 72 hours. I mean, it's just the amount of hours that are reported here, 150 hours, 150 hours, 170 hours.
So Jeff,
per
they're
month.
asking about the number of
Hold on,
hours.
just 1 second, let me finish.
wanna make
And
sure
then we also have how much they were paid overtime and how much their hourly was, and then the overtime payment. That is more than that's more than minimum wage, which I'm fine people making minimum wage. I want people to have a living wage, that's fine. But this is, I mean, you read your bill this morning. I read my bill. And I want to be able to go back to tax and say, listen, we're doing this for 88 kids, but we're being fair to the taxpayers. Paying someone almost $30 for an overtime wage.
Overtime wage, no.
27.08 for, it's just the amount of money that's spent on salary and not invested. It is invested back in the kids. The amount of money that spent on salary is just outrageous to me.
I think we
And
have a
so-
very simple explanation, if I can allow Jeff to
Yes.
answer it. Thank you for the question. Jeff, we're being asked about the overtime salaries. I have no idea of such a thing. There's no overtime for anybody in that sense. And about people working 50 hours. I imagine Avery Anderson's name is coming up again. Jeff, would you quickly address it? And if you can't, I will add to it. Go.
Well, sure. Well, first of all, because we are all paid as contract employees on a 1099, there is no overtime. We don't, pay time and a half or anything like that. It's based strictly on the hours. And I know after the last meeting, when there were all the questions about Avery Anderson's invoice, one of the things that I pointed out to Mayor was March was what we consider a 5-week month. And
Hold on. Just a point.
Hold on, Jeff.
A point of clarification.
Yeah.
If you're saying you're not doing overtime, so is this a oversight misprint on what was provided to staff? Because it clearly says in the line items that I think my colleague is referring to, overtime. That could be a misreport. And so he says there's no overtime.
We don't have overtime. I don't know who put that in there. I've never heard of such a thing.
Okay,
Overtime.
well, we should get that
And-
cleared up. That should be cleared up.
Yes,
Because Stephanie, I see where you
thank
are.
you for that clarification. And Jeff was saying that Avery Anderson worked 30 hours a week in a 5-week week, and she 39 hours, and she wore 3 hats, ma'am. We put out a job posting, and indeed, we got 800 resumes. Only 4 of them were from Pensacola. We hired all 4. We'll answer the 28 staff members you mentioned in a minute. But when we hired all 4, they had to be onboarded in April. The program started in June. We had no time. Avery Anderson, who got those long hours, worked sacrificially for 3 people's hats at 39 hours. And I will fire myself first before I let that woman be out of this incredible equation of sacrifice.
But she also worked 133 in April. I mean, all the numbers are very large, and that's great if you're.
And let's talk about the number of people you said that we hired. We have a lot of volunteers. What is not being told in this wonderful narrative is how many volunteer hours are put into this thing. And yes, ma'am, as a startup, we put in so many hours to recruit kids. When we were at Dixon, Mr. Kovacs would press one button and 80 people showed up. Thank you, Dr. Kovacs. But when we had to do it alone, we had to make 80 phone calls Yes, it was a startup. Yes, we had very large hours spent on the calling of parents. We had to train them on how to open Dropbox and learn to open a musical and learn how to download music. Every single one of those hours was with a kid, with a family on Zoom, doing enormous work that we didn't have to do had we stayed with Dixon. Jeff, do you want to quickly clarify what this 28 staff member and any of the salaries questions that was brought up?
I don't know where we're coming up with 28 staff members because by my calculation, we had 21 people, 16 of which were in Escambia County. If you're counting each individual invoice, because everything is done on a contract basis, if we had somebody come in and do a little bit of work for us on doing scenery, we had to pay them on a contract basis. If we had somebody come in to take the headshots, we had to pay them on a contract basis. But that was a piecemeal one-off. But we also paid the bus drivers out of as their hourly rates out of our contract, salaries. And I don't know where 28 people are coming from. I'd have to see where they're calculating
But
that from.
as a routine, we had 12 people. Yes,
I have a
ma'am.
question. I know you keep bringing up Dixon, but whenever you apply for the grant, Dixon also applied for the grant, and that was one of my concerns and one of the things I asked about. So whenever Dixon applied for the grant and you knew that you couldn't use Dixon because you guys both applied at the same time, I remember specifically asking this question because not only you guys, but there were other people that were using Dixon, and I asked, how would you use, if this is an after-school program, I understand the minimum dosage, but a lot of the programs did more than the minimum dosage. And I asked about Dixon, and I asked about this being the same, a similar program that was also going into Dixon. There was a,
Give me a second.
there was a clarification that you guys, I don't remember.
Yeah, I remember the question. It was a great question. We were so confident, and we didn't know May, schools shut down. And so we had to call the superintendent, deputy superintendent. We called some staff members, and thank God they gave us 5 other school names. And we embarked on the largest telemarketing call of our life, and we got all the teachers to nominate students so that their parents wouldn't get a cold call trying to sell some summer camp that was fancy and from New York. So instead, we were able to get teachers to partner with us and say, I'm going to nominate 20 of my students, and I'm going to show up, see them perform, and really partner with us. It was actually a blessing in disguise. But yes, ma'am,
But I
we
understand.
believed.
I'm saying you guys are mentioning Dixon, but you knew that Dixon also applied.
And
so-
we did not know that we could not just call these other schools in 4 weeks because they were shutting down for the summer. So Dixon was out and 6 schools were in, but guess what? They were shutting down, and they wouldn't want to talk to us till June 26th because that's when summer school over. And we were so glad that our summer camp didn't start till July 18th. And by miracle of calls and will and everyone's help, we managed to get through C.A. Weiss, who said we got nominated students. So yes, we were not ready for what the loss of Dixon meant to students who had learned our musicals and could do it.
Kim, what was the minimum dosage weekly? How many, was it weekly? What was the minimum dosage for the after school?
They were contracted to do 11 summer sessions, which includes rehearsals from June 3rd to July 22nd, and then a fall residency from October 14th to February 10th.
And 11 sessions was based on 11 days to teach 3 musicals.
And the fall residency was 24 sessions.
24
it's
sessions to
11
making it
summer
35.
And fall 24.
And just
And
sorry.
to clarify, your first quarterly report was not submitted until September 27th.
Yes, ma'am.
How could we have caught this, Mayor?
I really agree with you on that front, too. And again, we thought the quarterly report was based on July, August, September instead of March, April, May. And then we had to go back and collect the March, April, May report. That was the reason. Of course, the catching of that was not making sense, but the budgets were, we were seeing that we're getting close to our budget. So I agree, we would have and should have checked in with you sooner. But again, this issue of dosages, I'm so glad you're pointing it out. In the original proposal, based on a partnership with Dixon, we proposed 11 days
But you
to
knew,
teach.
but Dixon also was having a program.
No. When we wrote the proposal, we were with Dixon. That was literally a month after our big, amazing concert with them.
So did you come to the board and tell us that there was an issue?
let me answer the first part. Again, the original proposal where Ms. Kim just pointed out to the 11 days, that was a great estimation of kids who already knew our musicals. When we found out Dixon fell through, that was when we signed a contract with you, and we immediately chose 20 days. We doubled it right away.
But is
And
that in the
that you
contract?
knew about. And actually, there was a misquote in an email I just saw, because in the revised contract, we had to increase the dosage. We knew the new kids weren't going to learn 3 musicals. And so we proposed 20. And I just found out this week in an email communication that one of your executive staff members thought we threw in Saturdays. No, it was always July 18th through September 23rd. We didn't throw on Saturdays. But we did increase it to 20 days.
So what happened to the 24 fall sessions?
So that's what I'm saying, that in the increasing to 20 sessions, we realized we needed 10 more days. And we did that by doubling dosages and adding days. We couldn't put it
That
on
was the summer
Samus.
program, so what about the fall program?
We went through October 28th, which included a Halloween for the Hungry. We did that on our own dime. But we ended the program on September 23rd with 30-plus sessions. We added 10 dosages. We've documented it. We can't upload it. We understand that it wasn't reported in advance.
I guess what I'm asking is, what Kim just said was, you said for the $196,000, you were supposed to do a summer program and fall program.
Which we did from July 18th through September 23rd, and frankly, folded in 2 seasons in 4 months, instead of 2 camps in 2 separate months. Again, 4 consecutive months instead of 2 separate camps. These kids were on a momentum, they were learning, they were thriving. So for us, doing consecutive, sequential learning meant impact. Anything else would devastate their hard work and the community's response to it. So it was consecutive learning. We folded in 2 camps in 1. It was the same dosages. And again, we did make the mistake of not meeting regularly with the staff to say, these are the changes, instead of waiting for a quarterly report.
And Tori, thank you. If you finish, I certainly need to give the superintendent and Dr. North, because we got to wrap this one up very quickly.
I can go.
Superintendent and Dr. North.
I can go quick, Mr. May. What month did you find out you weren't going to be able to partner with Dixon School of the Arts?
March. I mean, we knew around the signing of the contract.
So when was that?
March. March is when we signed the contract, and we're like, oh, all right, well, we can do it.
Do you know when in March?
Around the signing of the contract. Because we met with Tammy Greer, and she said, don't worry, lots of schools, we can help you. If things change, you can talk to us. And we just thought we're going to call schools, and we started calling schools in April, and they were like, we're shutting down. And it was a lot of work first time.
You started calling schools in April?
We started getting numbers in April. We got 30 schools, but we weren't in the right zone. We weren't right. There was so much legwork to learn where to call. And frankly, Ms. Cooper really saved the day and gave us 5 schools, Oakcrest, Pensacola, this and that. We started calling them, and the only ones who picked up the phone were CA Weiss, and they brought us into the school. We did workshops. We met their teachers. They did Zoom sessions. We got a partnership with that school, which was ideal way to pilot the program. But I can assure you this was startup cost, because now we got 93 kids who are going to refer 50 more. I don't think we're going to have this level of, I believe Ms. Stephanie was mentioning, all this amount of individual labor. It's not 28 people that work for us. It was 5 people that worked around the clock to call schools and recruit. I don't think we're going to have that kind of cost ever again.
No, I don't think you will either. Thank you, ma'am.
No, thank you, Mr. Superintendent. Dr. North.
No real questions. A comment, I guess, that, again, as I'm understanding it, the amount of deviation from the contract versus what was delivered on submission of reimbursement requests, submission of explanation of where the dollars went, the expenditure of all of the dollars relatively early in the time course of this, and hearing particularly that you all have several other sites in existence tells me, as you've repeatedly stated, 30 years of experience of doing this type of thing. And I know each site, I suspect, has individual little nuances, but I guess I'm a little surprised with that degree of experience and exposure in other settings that there seems to be such a wide variation and requiring a rather extensive amount explanation and poor or opportunity for improved communications here and all. And if we look at funding this going forward, assurances that things are indeed, I keep hearing the mention of learning curves and those types of things. But again, our role here is to try to ensure that the taxpayers are getting their money's worth, if you will, out of this investment. And the word grant has come up several times. I would correct that again. This is not a grant. It is a contracted agreement here between two parties, and that there seems to be such a deviation from that contracted agreement. And if we go forward, of how that difference and that gap is going to be improved so that what is contracted for is indeed what is delivered.
Just may I briefly say that we folded 2 seasons in one. We shouldn't have done that without telling folks that that needed to happen. But the cash advance that our organization had to learn to manage, the crisis of cash flow, and the fact that, as Jeff said, in that report that is in the back of the yellow folder Ms. Abrams has, it shows that almost every time we submitted an invoice, sir, there was a new learning on the part of the Escambia bookkeeping methods. We were being given new rules of reporting, from payroll to receipts to how, and to the point where we just gave up on some of our expenses. This was mutual learning. I guarantee you that. We all were saying it. Ms. Greer graciously emailed us and saying, we are not only a government agency, we are a new government agency. We're not here to point the fingers. I believe everyone on the staff was there to help us. But there were plenty of new rules of reporting as we went along. And Jeff has literally email by email explained how you can't report this, you got to do this, use this form. Every single time, and we were delayed in getting our cash back. I assure you, the big deviation is that we're still owed, I don't know, $40-something thousand. But yes, to the point of our beloved board member here, we combined our 2 camps in one because we saw impact, and that's in the 83 pages of parents pouring their heart out about their kids. We hope that you will see impact and the return on your investment, and yes, a huge investment in us as a startup, because I promise you we cannot repeat the labor we put in. If for all the money in the world, it was way too much work.
Thank you. We appreciate y'all coming down, appreciate you presenting. Is there anything else from staff? Any more questions?
I just would like to explain the overtime, where that came from. I went through their personnel activity reports and was trying to come up with the pay rate for each employee. And there were several weeks where employees had more than 40, and on those paychecks, it looked like their rate was paid higher. So I was figuring if those extra hours were overtime. So that's why the pay range is showing on that report, because it was looking like those hours were overtime. So I'll have to ask them how come it was different each pay period.
So, and that's the point, and quite frankly, you're probably going to get with staff, like you said, to get that clarification. I mean, because if we have to have these debates with everybody, we'll be here in perpetuity.
Yes.
That has to be worked out at the staff level on the reporting mechanism. And what I recommend before our board meeting, that you meet with staff.
Yes, sir.
And get with staff. And, you know, and so as we move forward, colleagues, I'm not really that interested in narratives. I'm interested in outcome measurements. What were the goals? How did we measure them? How do we document they measured them? And if there's any fiduciary fiscal errors in which go. All the details has to be worked out at the staff level. We cannot work it out here. And so me as a board member, that's what I want to know. I want to know the outcome measurements of the things that were proposed that they would do. Either they accomplished them or they didn't, and what's the documentation to back it up. I'm not interested in someone saying they improved someone's grades without the report cards. The pre and post is what we need, and that's the documentation that I'm interested in. So thank y'all so much for being here.
Thank you very much for your time, gentlemen.
Is there anything else for this group? Thank you. Next group, Kim.
We can continue.
And safe travels back. Thank you.
Yeah, we can continue with those from last week's board meeting. So the second one would be Urban Development Center.
Okay. Jessica. Kim, John. Kim, go right ahead.
So the Urban Development Center, Tammy, do you want to talk about the program request change briefly?
Urban Development Center submitted a program request to lower their children's ages of the children they serve from originally 11 to 18 down to 5 to 18. That was the big change.
Yeah, the big change was an age change.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Mr. Rigsby.
We found in the struggles to recruit children that were between the ages of 11 and 18 in the town of Century to be a very difficult proposition based on many different variables that we had underestimated, in some cases overestimated. For instance, we didn't understand the struggles that families were having with the schools being stripped out of Century. We didn't really understand that as much. We didn't understand that our program had been identified in many cases as a black program for black children. It was not. Our program was for all children 11 to 18 in the town of Century. What we found that the parents that were deeply responsive to the program, to the aspects of the program, to the training and otherwise were children that were under 11 years old. Okay, so we served every child that came through the door, and we knew that when we came in that we would receive children that were under the age. We were prepared for that. We knew that from the beginning. What we were not prepared for was a lack of wholesale response from those children that were there. We initially had planned to go to the schools, pick up children, and bring them directly to the program. We found that to be cost prohibitive from the start. This is one of the reasons why we changed that dynamic and really focused on the children in Century. Because by the time the children got out of school and we went to pick them up and bring them back and then take them home, it would have been cost prohibitive. And the budget of $72,000 that we had planned for transportation would not have been enough money. This is one of the reasons why we focus primarily on the children who were directly in Century. That is one of the reasons why we requested the change to include children that were younger, appreciating their response, appreciating the town's response. That justified for us a rationale for coming in and requesting that change.
Any questions from Mr. Rigsby?
Down to kindergarten. From 5 all the way through 18, those students are separated. The elementary students are separated from the high school students or the middle school to high school students. We treat those students differently. How we work in the workforce development piece of the program, which is really more or less workforce readiness, it has to do with the tenets and the fundamentals of building those characteristics in students toward workforce. Every student that's 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 can be taught communication skills, listening skills, and otherwise. Every kid that's 7, 8, and 9 will eventually be 11, 12, 13, 14. So that's the logic that we used. We expressed that. We didn't hide the fact that we had children in the center that were younger than our age range. We put it in the SAMIS. These same students are the ones that we took on our field trips and we allowed to learn and eat at the center in Century.
I have a quick question.
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. So you started in April, according to our notes, and you'd sit until now, in November, you've served 30 kids. Is that correct?
In the age range that we have from 11 to 18, yes. Our center regularly holds between 25 and 30 students per day. Per day.
So I guess 30 kids, you've served like individual units, 30 kids. It's not 30 kids this day, 30 kids that day. It's just 30 kids.
No, 30 kids per day that come to the center. Our center is open each day.
Okay.
We have activities, and we had these going
So there'll be
on.
different kids every day?
They're different kids, yes. Not the same kids, sometimes the same kids. There are families that are more consistent with their children attending than others. We recognize that. We've had children that we've had to disapprove of coming to the center. We will tell you, kids that are in the age range. There are matters in Century, family matters, cultural matters, neighborhood matters in Century that prevent certain kids from participating in our program. That is just the reality. We do not,
So I have a question.
we do not deal with violence. We don't deal with bullying. There are certain things that will restrict a person from coming in to the center.
Go ahead, Toy.
So if you have 30 kids, how are you measuring the impact and able to judge that? And also, how often are they being seen? Is it 5 days a week, 4 hours?
It is 5 days a week.
5 days a week.
For most weeks. We do mental health on Mondays. So the mental health sessions are broken out. We do mental health Mondays. In the biweekly session, we do coding for kids. The codings for the younger kids are broken out separately from the coding for the older kids. We do pre and post. We ask for measurements to be done by all of our subcontractors, and everyone that's a professional in this space is actually coming from Pensacola. So we appreciate them and their work that they're doing on behalf of the children of Century.
So I just have I guess a point of clarification. I understand the 11 kids. I understand the community in Century because I do outreach. My only concern is what you're asking for is outside of what the contract is, and that's a whole nother, if we open up another RFP for after school, that would really be like another after school program. So that's just my concern is,
Yes, ma'am.
not that I don't think the need is there. I absolutely agree that the need is there.
Yes, ma'am.
My concern is after we apply, because again, I was the grants chair, after we did this grant and submitted it and people applied, I've had numerous people ask me, how can they get the grant? And so my concern is just to be fair for those people that missed the deadline that also would like to apply for the grant. If we allow people to change their requests and do something else, then those people that missed that deadline, that's my concern. So again, I don't disagree with the need. I know the need is there. It's just following the grant, and that's my concern. It's just if we allow somebody to change the scope of the grant, then I feel like those people that missed the deadline will feel slighted because they don't have a chance to apply now. Now, what we do with the remaining funds, if there's any funds and whether we reopen that, that would be something different, but that's just my concern.
I agree with you, ma'am. We did not intend ever to change our objectives from 11 to 18. We wanted to expand. We want to still meet our numbers from 11 to 18. What we want to do is be able to include the children and not be excluded from any resources. We were sent an email yesterday asking about the percentage of children who were under the age of 11 who ate from the food that we serve the children in the center. That's a difficult proposition for us in a place like Century. It is a very, very difficult proposition. And admittedly, the program in Century is not like any other program that you have. It is not. The variables that undergird our program and our operation in Century is quite extensive. Whether we're talking about the mental health aspects of the coding or the teaching and the training, the tutoring that takes place in English and mathematics that we have. I understand, and I'm not disagreeing with you, Ms. Woods. In fact, I appreciate what you're saying because what you're saying is very, very true. Just consideration for the particular circumstances of Century is all we're asking for.
And John, thank you for going to Century. My dear friend Commissioner Berry is always interested in youth programs in Century, and so to me, poverty has no boundaries. Rather, it's the urban core of Century. So thank you for doing it. But you said something that caught my attention that I have wanted to hear because since I've been on this board, I've talked about outcome measurement. How do we measure it? And so how do we know where we're going if we don't know where we started?
Yes, sir.
And you said something about pre and post testing.
Yes, sir.
And so. Did we document that? Do we have that? I mean, to me, because that's the measurement tool that I know where they came in at, and I know where they are today. I mean, we got initial, intermediate, long term, and I can measure that. That's tangible because, as the first speaker said, I own a lot of property too, and so when you look at your tax bill, where's my money going? How did I measure it? So I like that, and I hope that that's added to the report, the pre and post, and how we measured it, because I think that that's what taxpayers want. So I appreciate you doing the pre and post.
And I want you all to know that the Urban Development Center is responsible for training hundreds of kids across the state of Florida. We just came off of our fall career camp where we had literally 126 students that we just got through training, spending over $17,000 in stipends and gifts to students. This is what we do.
Have we charted that? So your pre and post, have we charted those measurables?
You have not. I don't know if we have turned in the pre and post.
You've
Have we,
turned
Dr.
in a
Griffin?
couple of things, and it can be found on page 76.
Yes, those things that we have, but the more extensive ones, I think.
I didn't see, I've read that. I've read that twice. I didn't see. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, they did a pre and post survey to 30 participants under caution, evaluation, and reporting. And then their target was the 10% increase in student improvement for middle and high school students. So it's in those two sections.
So, I mean, but we measured that student improvement by report cards, I would assume.
And also, I wanted to say through the Focus, we let students log into their Focus
Right.
accounts and get where they were, and then we would measure how well they would do over time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Jessica, I mean, Ms. Griffin, Dr. Griffin, I'm give you your title. Can you add that as a part of the backup? Because I know that's important, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, because to me, you know, as we move forward, that's important because I do it every day. I got 50 kids on a Focus on my phone right now that I screenshot their report cards when they come into my center. And I know that's the only way that I can look at their attendance, their grades, and I don't have to worry about, you know, objectively assessing gains or losses. It's empirical. And to me, I think that that's very important. What you're doing is for all the organizations to have empirical data. I mean, it's black and white. I mean, it doesn't lie. It's not an emotion. It's not a narrative. It's the facts. So I appreciate y'all doing that.
Yeah, and I want to just make another note on what John was saying in regards to still trying to expand the participation of 11 to 18-year-olds. We know that we have 3 institutions that we focus on. We're focusing on Bratt Elementary, focusing on Ernest Ward Middle School. Bratt has about 500, maybe 16 students, and they do have an after-school care program that we're trying to connect to. Ernest Ward has about 500, maybe 506 students, so we have the population. We just need a better connectedness, and we're working on that.
And I think that, you know, one of the things that, you know, outside of this seat, you know, we fund a lot of economic development and workforce training at the county. And I would be disappointed if there was not a partnership with Career Escarosa. The state funds him to do workforce training. I mean, so when we talk about Century, there have been a lot of resources put up for Century for workforce development through Career Escarosa. So when people say it has not been, it really has been. Pensacola State is tasked with doing things in the North End. And as well as we fund Florida West, and they're supposed to be doing economic development and workforce training. And quite frankly, I led the charge to fund the Minority Chamber, and that's their job as well. So hopefully that they're partnering with y'all,
Yes.
on this workforce development.
We
And I
are.
wanted to say that CareerSource has been an active partner. In fact, we use their metric system to metrics learning in order to allow the children to do the escapism into the vocational training and services that they provide through there. So thank you again for that. But they are partners to the program, not Florida West. We're hoping to get partnerships with the schools, Ernest Ward, Northview High School. It's been a little difficult of a proposition, primarily because those schools, many of them do not have PTAs. They don't have real after-school programs. The only one, I think, is Bratt that actually has an after-school program. So getting the kids where they are at is where we're trying to go. But our instruction has been, hey, you guys need to go to the football games. Hey, you guys need to join the football clubs because football is so big up there. That's a difficult proposition for us because we are coming from Pensacola. In fact, everyone is coming from Pensacola. We're planning to actually send now our trainers into Ernest Ward for an after-school program at Ernest Ward, into Bratt to work with their after-school program so that we can get the tutoring into their school. If they want the mental health, we'll bring that as well. But our primary focus has been the center. ECT invested $40,000 into a brand new state-of-the-art computer center. Also, I want you all to know that the Urban Development Center was donated 10 virtual VR headsets for us to launch our virtual reality educational center in Century as well, as we're expanding the opportunities for children to learn in Century. It's really a beautiful opportunity. So we continue to be appreciative of ECT.
Thank you. I mean, my final question,
I have
so
a
we can
question
move
for
on.
Kim.
Yeah, can I ask mine, and then I'll give it back to you. I'll just say mine. I didn't say ours. I just said mine. So I apologize. Just Kim, because I'm reading it. So it's 30 kids, not necessarily the same 30 kids every day.
Yes.
Correct. So the pre and post was done on how many children? I'm trying to figure out the duplicated versus the unduplicated number of participants that are
We
being
do
served.
pre and post on every child. What we're working to do is update more regularly the progress of the children as they're going through. For instance, if we recognize a child has a particular problem in mathematics, and we're going through the process of having tutoring that's done 2 days a week in Century, we need to know that there's progress being made in those particular subject areas. So we're working right now to get the kids, keeping them in focus because they can log in right from the computers in the center, and showing that progress data and sharing it with ECT.
So what's the total number right now that you service as of to date, year to date? Kim, do we have that?
The reporting deadline was November 15th, and we had that there were 30 total served through November 15th, and that 11 of those attended in the past 30 days.
Okay.
So we're looking at the data, and we're looking at the kids that do attend the center on a regular basis. Are those reoccurring students? Those same students is what you're saying? When you're talking about daily count of students, if you're looking at daily count of students, how many attend the center each day?
The way I,
Yeah.
Because, when we look at the daily count of students that attend each day, that number is going to vary from that 20, 25 all the way to 30 each day.
Right. And that's what I was trying to delve into, because it's not what's reported here. There may be 30 different kids every day.
Same kids.
A lot of them are the same kids, because some families are more intentional and purposeful about wanting their kids to attend the program.
So are it the same kids every day? Because I thought earlier you said
not every day are they the same kids, but we do have kids that are
right. We have some duplicated, some unduplicated.
Kids,
But
no.
I mean, and we're trying to get to that raw number of how many total participants.
Yeah. Well, individual participants, we'll get that number for you.
That's fine.
We'll get that number for you as well.
We have that. It's in the report.
It's in the report.
30. We're not counting elementary.
Well, the report says 30.
Yeah, it's
Total.
30.
Yeah, we're not. No, we're not.
So is that a real number?
We're not counting the elementary kids.
Okay.
That's just our 11 to 18-year-olds.
So
Okay?
it's 30, 11, 18-year-olds.
18-year-olds, and everybody.
Unduplicated or duplicated. It's total of 30 kids that you've served.
That's different from the elementary kids that are coming.
Okay.
So,
All right. Got it.
Yes.
Thank you. Tori?
Yes. Kim, can you tell me what the actual request was for and what was supposed to be measured? Like, what was this grant requesting? And what was the goal? Because I'm
Right,
looking at the
so-
outcomes, and it says healthier and more positive relationships and improvement in self-reporting of mental health and wellness, but I guess for some reason, I thought it was a workforce program.
Right, and because we're looking at them in November, and they will produce an end of contract year report that includes those measures, we only have that available now.
Can you tell me what the actual grant was? What was the request?
Right, it was those 7 key elements that Dr. Griffin described at the board meeting, from the workforce readiness training, work-based experiences, internships, life skills, technology training, entrepreneurship, and tutoring.
And then what were the means of measurement? Or how are they going to measure if those 7 elements were met?
I can get that for you. I'm just going to open up their contract.
Okay, thank you.
Is that something you'd have to have right now?
No. I just wanted to know.
Just a point of clarification. One of the things that we recognized in the beginning is that we needed a people development program in Century. And everything that we do is based on the development and ultimately of turning children and youth into adults. Our program was 11 to 18. We do not want to change the parameters of that, only to extend our services to children that are younger than 11 years old. That's what our ask is. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rigsby.
Yes, sir.
Any more questions, Dr. Northrup?
I have a question in regards to looking at the original contract that proposed serving 750 children over 3 years. So
Yes.
even if we divide that, that's 250
Yes.
per year, if I'm
Yes, sir.
reading that correctly.
Yes, sir.
As opposed to the roughly 30 in that 11 to 18-year-old age
Yes, sir.
bracket that we're talking about. That's a significant gap there.
Yes, sir.
What do you all propose in that regard as far as addressing that, expanding that? I've heard the comment about attending the sports events, those
Well,
types
we don't,
of things.
we don't intend to attend any sporting events. That's not who we are. What we're going to do is we're going to be more aggressive in our attention to communicating the effectiveness of our program to parents. We're hoping that the parents will be more responsive than they've been so far. We're also dealing with the racial politics that we're addressing that as well. That is our meetings with white pastors in the community who have, and many of the whites have not allowed their children to come to the program. We have had those discussions with them, and they are mitigating matters in their community. So we're dealing with that as well. So those are just some of the dynamics that we have that undergird this. And the town council, including the mayor, they recognize these things, and they're being great helpmeets to us addressing those matters. And that's one of the reasons why our numbers are low, but we do plan to continue on that. We don't plan to change any of those particular objectives, okay? Thank you, sir.
Just a thought, because I am a baseball, football
Yes, ma'am.
mom.
Oh, we know that.
If football season is technically over,
Yes, ma'am.
I would probably advise reaching out to them, because those
ma'am.
parents are committed to being in practice probably 4 days a week and at the football field every Saturday. And I know NWE plays teams in Pensacola, and probably 80% of their travel is to Pensacola. So if you're looking for parents, I would probably consider reaching out to them, because those parents will be committed to, they're getting their kids to practice. If they practice like we do Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and all day on Saturday. So those parents will probably be your key parents if you're looking for some participants in the program.
Yes, ma'am. And we're also providing virtual training as well, and that's one of the things that we've noticed about a lot of the youth in the program. Because they do play sports in the afternoon, we have to kind of create another set of circumstances by which they can participate in the program. We recognize that, and thank you, Ms. Woods, for your advisement in that regard.
And I wanted to
I do have
piggyback
some
off of what,
answers to your question.
Okay.
I wanted to
Whenever you're ready.
piggyback
Hold
off your
on.
question.
Kim, will you go ahead?
Okay, I just
And
wanted
then
to
Kim.
piggyback that we have reached out to, we have one of our subcontractors who's very closely knitted with the local football teams, and they are bringing those kids in now that the football season is over.
Yes,
So that's supposed to transpire.
Kim.
Okay, so there were 2 goals, and the first goal is probably the one that's most relevant to your question. So this is offering up to 250 children and youth specific programs and activities to foster development in mostly the areas of technology. So their measurement was, at a minimum, 80% of youth participating in exercises with practical applications when using the internet, creating professional and short emails, passwords for accounts, privacy on their desktops. 50% of youth developing a website using Scratch, Python, or JavaScript, youth engaging in class VR to improve engagement, participating in pre and posts only on mental health, emotional intelligence, soft skills, home ec, work readiness. And then the second goal was mostly about recruitment and getting the word out.
That is correct.
All right, thank y'all so much.
You're welcome, thank you.
Thank you. Kim, next group. Victoria, I'm glad you brought up the Little League footballs, because quite frankly, within the minority community, that's where all the children are. Well, let me just tell you, those coaches get up every day, and they volunteer, and they drive, and they coach, and they tutor, and I bet you not one of them has ever gotten funded. Yeah. Kim?
The next group is Valerie's House, and I don't think we've got anyone from Valerie's House. We did get an email from the regional director, Krista Brandt, who said that she could not attend. I don't know if any other staff is here. And she sent this yesterday evening along with an attachment with some comments. But we didn't see that till this morning. I didn't have a chance to print that for you.
Okay.
But it was,
Do you want to read them for the record, or it's pretty long? Well, you got it then.
Yeah, it's 6 pages, and it's A
Well,
lot of
no.
what was included in the program change request documentation from last week.
Send it to Rick Allison. I mean, I don't want to read 6 pages right now. Who's next?
So now we can go to the other two who have some caution symbols and
Okay.
some issues. And the first one in that case would be Freedom Schools.
Freedom Schools? Is there someone here? Oh, you with Freedom Schools?
No.
Oh, okay.
Can you tell us real quick what their caution issues are for Freedom School? I know
Right,
it's,
so
I know it's
Free-
in here, but just for the public.
Yes, so Freedom Schools, our issue is that they did not collect individual participant data. They don't have any addresses. We cannot verify that they served children who domicile in Escambia County. They did run the program. They did serve about 100 children. Attendance was pretty strong. Their goal was 150, but they only drew down about half of their budget. So our issue was more wanting to reinforce the message that data collection is so important. And we need to be able to evaluate these programs. We can't do it without any data.
All right, next.
And the next one would be chain reaction.
Okay. Do we have anyone here from Chain Reaction? Christian?
I don't see anyone.
I don't see anyone here from Chain Reaction. All right, so what's the staff position on that? What's
Okay,
the-
we have a couple concerns. One is that we believe that some of these dollars are being used to supplant services that were already happening, and that the provider has not been able to establish satellite chain reaction centers at the high schools that are in the contract, and that is what this contract was for, was to open up satellite chain reactions. The provider has had difficulty forming relationships with some new staff that are at those schools. Also, the pandemic kind of made relationships have to restart. And what we understand is that one satellite will be opening in January, and the provider has tried to stretch to serve additional low-income and at-risk youth at its existing school, which is Washington High School.
What funds were supplanted that, can you tell? What programs?
So what Kim is speaking about is that she believes some of the children that are serving are kids that were already in the program. So instead of getting new children, they're submitting reimbursements for ones they already had.
How do we establish that baseline?
It was mostly in the beginning. As the program has restarted for the school year, we believe it's been corrected.
And Kim, I don't know enough about this, but I do know that most of these programs were started before we got, and I think people should remember that, this was to expand programs and not service what you were already doing. And so to me, going into the next contract, I would want to see your last year database of registration versus your new year database. Because if we're paying for kids that a program was already serving, then we are certainly off base with our mission, because the trust was never intended to serve kids who are already being served. And so to me, as we move forward, and we can have this discussion when we go through the groups, that has to be, and if people say, well, I don't know who I served, well, you had an existing organization. Where's your roster? Where's your registration form? Where's your database from the year before you were funded? And now here's your new database. I mean, because how do we know whether or not those kids were being served? And so I think that needs to be a part of the requirement. And, it wasn't part of the grant. And, I think, as someone said, we're learning, but we have to make sure moving forward into the second year that we clean up some of those things that we made a mistake on. So the Children's Trust was never intended to substitute funding for things that were already operational. It was for new and expanded programs, meaning very clearly if a child was already in your program receiving this service, you had to expand the service, give them another service. You couldn't give them the same service and we pay for it. My interpretation,
Right,
Madam
and
Counsel.
we've come up with a couple different ways, like, for example, utility bills and rental fees. So if 50% of your program is for ECT, then we should only be paying for 50% of your rent or utilities. Or even like we do with some providers, if it's an after-school program, but they also use the building during the day, we have a formula that Tammy's created where we can kind of allocate for those hours that it's actually being used for ECT kids.
Right. Well, you can't be, I mean, and so I'm not going to, in the media's here, I'm not going to be held hostage by people giving a narrative of we're just trying to help children. And for the last 20 years, you did it for free, but all of a sudden now you're making a $100,000 salary. That's unfair, and I'm telling you, taxpayers are not going to live with that. I mean, they're just not. And as a board member of stewardship, I'm not going to live with it. I mean, if you were doing it for passion, if you were doing it for the right reason, well, you were doing it for the right reason. Everyone should get paid. I'm like my colleague here. I mean, people should be able to get paid, but I mean, there has to be at some point, you know, that this is not just a windfall of money for economic development and job creation. It's a children trust fund to improve the quality of life for children who have been left out. That's exactly what it's for. And, you know, and as I look through all of these, you know, a pause to my colleagues, when I look at, you know, the majority of the money being spent on salaries, I see hundreds of thousands of dollars in salary. I see no money in background and fingerprinting. I see no money in food and supplies. You know, sometimes I see no money in insurance, and I see a high number here, and we're not getting those direct services to our kids, and we're only sending them 1 day a week. And then there's a $50,000 or $60,000 salary, and we're only touching these kids twice a week. I can just tell you, all the coaches at NEP and the volunteers and all the people at Legion Field and Key Field, they would love that opportunity to be paid that type of money. And so we have to be very good stewards of it. And for me, you know, we have to make sure that we can't go back from last year, but as we move forward into the new contracts, we need to be clear to our providers of what we expect. And so that's why it's a 3-year contract with a 1-year renewal, so we can be very clear in, you know, not holding anyone hostage for the things they did in the past, but telling them clearly what we're going to accept as we move into the future. Go ahead, Kim. And that's just my little closing rant, but I mean, I'm very, very serious about it.
Well, so for the workshop, that would conclude the contracts that did have yield flags or red X's. So it's up to the committee how they want to handle the rest. If you want to give everyone a couple minutes, and 1 minute, or
I'm no whatever, Dr. Northrup, whatever y'all want. As long as we're out here at 11:30.
On the last one in chain reaction, it's another one. I think there was with good intent, kind of an overzealous estimate on many of these as I've looked at, noting that their proposed number in their contract was 650 served each year. Now, the other one was 750 over 3 years, so I'm kind of giving benefit of the doubt, dividing that 750 by 3, coming up with 250 a year, but this one specifically said 650 each year, and yet there were 62 served. And regardless of how we want to count that as far as quotas or various things or whatever, if the original contract was for 650 and only 10% of that number was achieved, I have cause for reflection there. Another point that I've noticed on any number of these as being one of the areas of reflection, concern, whatever, on, again, the majority of them is the area of sustainability, and reminding all of the various contractees, inclusive of those 14 that seem to have come up with meeting or exceeding things, is that area of sustainability. It is the hope of this board and the community that this kind of is serving as seed money, if you will, with sustainability being a desirable feature of all of these contracted programs, so that not only are we benefiting these children over this year and potentially for the next 3 years, but as we look forward into the future, that 5, 10, 15 years from now, these programs will be continuing to provide benefits to the children throughout Escambia County, from, again, the Bay up to our colleagues in the Century area, and long term. So that would encourage these programs, one, to look at the numbers, perhaps rather than just as optimistically, perhaps now that we all have some history, look at them more realistically, and to be considering and looking at that idea of additional grants, of additional sources of funding that may be out there, production of things that may generate revenues that would keep these programs going into the future.
Dr. Norton, thank you. And, since we are the program committee and we're having a workshop step, I think Dr. Norton is absolutely right. I think the sustainability, but a part of, the next contract should be about sustainability. What is your long-term goal of sustaining this organization? We've seated you. How are you going to go after this funding goes away? I mean, how? And so that would be good stewardship. And any good grant, any seed grant, and as you said, it's not a grant, it's a tax. But that should be, in my opinion, a part of the plan that we receive from people. Not only the outcome measurements, but we should know their goals, their objectives, how we're going to measure them, and what's your long-term goal. Because when I look at things and you got $200,000+ in administrative salaries and you got $2,000 in feeding children, I mean, that's just not good stewardship to me. I mean, I see a ton of money in executive salary, and I see no volunteer training. I mean, so who trained the volunteers? Who did the background checks? I mean, those are things that we have to dig deep into, and it's probably not going to happen at our level, but we have to at least give staff that flexibility, say those are the desires for this board. And for me, those are concerns when I look at tutoring. I mean, what are we tutoring out of books? Kids don't even read paper books. There's no money in IT. There's no money in technology. But we're saying we have this robust training program and tutoring program for our children. Well, I don't know if I necessarily buy into that. I mean, so, I know the school, every kid got to have a Chromebook. And so, maybe that's being paid for somewhere else, but those things have to be shown to the taxpayers. If you've been existing off volunteer hours, I think a part of it is to show us in kind how many volunteer hours you have, what's your overall budget, and how it's being supplemented from other sources other than the tax, the ad valorem tax of Escambia County. And so to me, and this is just a workshop that we're talking, but those things are important to me as we move forward, because I can't in good conscience vote for another round of contracts without those things being inclusive in it. And so if it takes us the next meeting to get through it, I'll just take it. I know people want to know where they're going to be next year, but to me, that with the full board, these are some of the questions that I would like to come from the program committee, some of the things that I've just said. And I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to go that
Quick
long.
question.
You have the floor.
I just want to also ask, can they come back and redo their budgets, like the mess hall? Megan, Dr. Pratt realized that she didn't need all of her money, so she came back and said, I don't need all this taxpayer money, which I really appreciate her doing. And so some of these that we've talked about and that we've discussed these past 5, can they come back and redo their budget for next year so we can consider them? Is that allowed? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Absolutely. I think hopefully, not only that group, but, hopefully, all of our providers see the direction in which our organization is going. And obviously, we're going to hire a new executive director here soon. And so we have to have the things in place that's going to make us effective. Before we go, we do have another speaker, Carla in.
Before they go, I know this is a workshop, but for the ones that we did not talk about, the other 13 that are here, sitting here, can we just, I know we're not doing a recommendation for the year 2 renewal, but since we did not talk about them, are they?
Yeah, so that was the second item on your agenda, was 10 and 11, looking at the year 2.
I was going to get to it just after I let those speak.
After them?
Yeah, I was going to let Dixon School of Art speak because they had put it in earlier, and I kind of went, and then so I was going to talk about that.
Hi, everyone. I'm Carla Ent. This is Dr. Kovacs. He's our principal at Dixon School of Arts and Sciences. And I just wanted to clarify a few things. First of all, thank you guys. We have a wonderful program at Dixon, and we're just so thrilled with everything we've been able to accomplish with our ECT grant. I felt like there were some confusing things said, and so I just want to clear the record. When we wrote the proposal, Dr. Kovacs and I wrote the proposal together for our after-school program. Mr. Dozier, who spoke for CTC, he's actually on our board of directors, so he voted for us to do this after-school program and understood that they would be separate from Dixon.
This was September of 2020.
Right, when we wrote yes, exactly. So that part is a little confusing to me. There was no, intent that he was going to be able to get students from Dixon for this particular grant. It was not written that way. He wasn't blindsided by that. And in fact, I would dare say a good share of his students are actually Dixon students or former Dixon students. We consider ourselves a community school. And so we're open to everyone. I think we have partners here. Sid is right there. Alex, our kids go to programs all over the city, and we're very proud of that they get that type of training. Just a couple of other things, I'm sorry. Let's see. Yeah, I guess that was it, really, that there was just no conflict of interest. Go ahead, yeah.
We just simply wanted to clarify, our name was mentioned quite a bit in the Children's Theater Company, rebuttal to you all. Our relationship was very minimal to start, and they presented 6 weeks on a Saturday, 6 Saturdays and a show. That was, it was meant to be in the summer, it turned out to be in the fall of 2022. We had said, we're starting our own, program. And so we are certainly doing the ECT process on our own, and it was very, very clear. So it was clear to them from the very start. They were welcome to continuing to use students that had worked with them, but just not our location. So what they had said of us repeatedly was certainly an exaggeration or blatant lie.
So did you know that they had put in for the ECT grant for the theater?
Yes, we certainly.
Did you agree to allow them to use your facility in the
Oh,
beginning?
no, we told them in their ECT proposal not to mention our name at all.
We in fact asked everyone to do that. Alex can attest to that. We do have a lot of kids that go to children's chorus, and so we just said, please don't include us in your, because we want to do our own after-school program.
Yeah.
So we love you, and the kids can still go to you, but
we
we
couldn't
want to
use our
stand on
theater
our
because
own.
we were using our location. We were using our cafeteria, our cafeterinasium, which is
And
the
this
theater
was,
right
this
there.
was brought up in board meetings. I've been on the board at Dixon for 5 years, and
Yeah.
this was brought to everyone's attention that it would be a conflict of interest for CTC, for Eric to be a paid employee there and also be on the board at Dixon School of Arts and Sciences. So that was, just, it can't be that way.
We
So-
needed to be very clear to you all, of course, and so we
Yes.
wanted
Okay,
their
that's fine.
proposal
Thank you.
Thank
to be
you.
clear.
Thank you.
All right, sorry.
Thank
Okay.
you all.
Okay, back to this. Go ahead. Stephanie, in closing, to me, we're getting ready to go into our second year. We're the program committee that's tasked with kind of reviewing this, and I think, each of us would have our own opinion. And so I've just literally laid out to me, expectations, of, those four that came and to the future people. And I think that they should have a chance before the staff brings it to the board, because some of the questions that I said today were going to be my questions at the board meeting. And for me, I'm not going to vote for it if some of those things are not addressed, because at the end of the day, like you said, there's a tax bill and we're responsible. And so, last year, we were kind of moving, we've had some transition, but as I, being in the world that I'm in and living in it, I recognize and looking at these budgets that, the majority of the revenue needs to go to the participants, in my opinion. And for me, those are the type of proposals that I'm going to be able to support. So with that, we're going to wrap it up here. And I'll give everybody a chance. Do you have any closing remarks or questions for staff or questions for if you have a question for an organization, you can do it.
Nothing for me.
Thank you. Madam Counsel?
I just want to say thank you to the staff. I don't know if the public has seen everything that the staff has done, but they've done this amazing report. They've done reimbursement expenditure report, and they've done funding requests for next year. And I just want to say thank you to the staff. So I guess my question, though, is we are going to vote on the OST recommendations for year 2 renewal at the next board meeting. Is that what I'm understanding?
I would expect for staff to bring a recommendation back to
Okay.
the board.
Okay, perfect.
But just keeping in mind the concerns that you've heard from all of us today.
And thank you to all those who are here who do run organizations. I know it's been a long 2 hours, so thank you for coming, and thank you for all you do for our kids.
Absolutely. Thank you, madam. Mr. Superintendent?
Thank you to everybody that's here today. Thank you for participating with the Escambia County Children's Trust. I particularly want to say thank you to our staff and the information that they have provided to us, particularly in short order. It's ironic that that I have the opportunity, sitting as the interim superintendent, to sit on this Children's Trust and know the impact that many of these organizations can have on the students in our school district and the positive impact that they can have. And I should say positively that they have. But I also need to tell you that it's disappointing when I see 11 participants, 30 participants, and yet we're expending $20,000, $30,000 a month. So I will think long and hard prior to our next board meeting on where I will cast my vote, and I'm just one. But I thought it was important that I say that today.
Thank you, Mr. Superintendent. We appreciate your service. Dr. Northam?
I would like to echo the comments of appreciation from the feedback from you all. Our intent, again, is to try to reflect the wishes of the community as we pursue our roles as stewards of these monies and the taxpayers' revenue and all that's put forth to us. I am from Pensacola, from Escambia County, have lived here essentially my entire life other than schooling. I practiced 37 years at the local children's hospital. My mentor would tell me repeatedly, and I came to see it firsthand, that the needs within the pediatric population of our communities has always exceeded the resources available to meet those needs. And so seeing these additional dollars that have now been voted on by the community and the citizens of the community to tax themselves in order to generate revenues to meet and address the needs of the children in this community has just been an overwhelming spectacle for me to see firsthand. And having been involved with attempting to meet some of those needs throughout the community and beyond, I have seen that to be true, that the needs that have been out there have always exceeded those resources. And I'm sort of like, very much like the superintendent here, to see that some of these and how we may do better at reaching the needs that are out there, which I know are there. I know it was the intention of these programs to do that, but would encourage all of you all who are involved with these programs, who are vested in these various programs, if you all have ways that you all can think of to expand the impact and to improve the impact of these programs that we already are contracted with, and or as we see needs that are driven by the needs assessment that we've had developed. Again, that is our intent, is to try to provide services that are going to better the lives of this county's children. How we can do that effectively and efficiently to get the biggest bang for our buck, if you will. And would welcome any of that feedback to us. So thank you in advance.
Thank you, Dr. Northam. And I want to echo Tammy. I mean, you're leading as an interim as a superintendent, and your staff did a great job. In getting this information. Met last Tuesday with you and Ms. Krupta, and quite frankly, I mean, it's so much information. I'm like the superintendent. I got to go back and continue to review it and get the other information because it was in detail. But Superintendent Leonard, just like you, I'm just one vote on this board, and sometimes I'm the lone vote on this board, and that's fine. I don't mind. But I do remember when this tax was passed, the propaganda material that was used is that no child will be left behind. We'd go into the pockets of poverty, and we get those kids who are ones that has the least opportunity to excel in our county. And you're absolutely right, Keith. You know, every day I go through Montclair and I see kids walking home, hundreds of kids walking home from Montclair Elementary School, and they're walking home into Oakwood Terrace, leaving CAY, into poverty, and they can't get help with their homework, they can't eat, they don't have a decent pair of shoes, they can't get a haircut. These kids are going into all type of situations where they're being molested, and there's sometimes no hope. And although we can't help every child all at once, we can eventually help every child if we just try. And the disappointing thing to me is, Keith, when I hear of people, having to go into, the community center to pick up kids, or go over here into the football field and pick up kids. I mean, go into the places where they are. Go into the housing projects and get them. That's why you're getting paid. I mean, it's easy to volunteer at YMCA, Boys and Girls Club, and help the kids that can get a ride to practice, that can get tutoring. But this tax was created to go help those children that don't have a chance. And for me, I'm going to look at each one of them one by one and see who's helping the children that don't have a chance. And that's what's important to me in my vote, Keith. I agree. The schools in my district, Lincoln Park, Global, you CAYs, you see those schools, I see those children going home with a loss of hope. And quite frankly, for me, one touch a week is not enough. Tori, Stephanie, I know you know, we're out there 7 days a week with kids, in the football field. The only way to develop a relationship is to develop and spend time with them. And so for me, those are the type of programs that I'm looking for, although, we know that all these things are up for renewal. In my opinion, in God we trust, all others sign on the dotted line. Include in your contract these things that are important, because we got to hold people accountable for the money. And, I will review each one of them, and we want to make visits. And I know that staff's been overtasked, but, at some point we have to make sure that our outreach people from a programmatic point is not doing planned case management where they anticipate you being there, but we're just going by there checking out these programs. And the best way to find out the best evaluation, the best case management, is to talk to the participants themselves. And so I'm very interested in some of our case management and talking to those who are receiving those services. So with that, Tori, did you have anything before we close?
Yeah, I just wanted to say, as the past grants chair, a lot of these questions were my concerns last year. One of the reasons I advocated for grassroots organizations was because they already had that relationship, and you can have all the resources in the world, and I know I said this last year with a lot of pushback from the community, but you have to have those relationships. You can write a wonderful grant on paper, and I understand the concerns, but when people came to us for these grants, their job was to do their research before they applied. When I do my job, I have to do my research before I apply. I can't say, well, I know there are certain things that are going to happen, but the whole point when you came to us was that you already had those relationships. And again, I graded those grants based on the work that I do and knowing how hard it is to have those relationships. And you can have a wonderful program, but if those families don't trust you and don't know you, you're not going to get in. And so I knew that going into this, and I know a lot of people, there was a question about how I graded things or my concerns last year, and we're here today because of those exact same concerns. You can't just make this great program and not understand the children that you're reaching. And when people came to us, you guys were telling us you already understood those families and the dynamics behind. Anybody can ask me, I know where I'm at from July to November. I'm at the football field 6 days a week and on Sundays. But, so if you are trying to reach that target population, you have to understand where those kids at and how to reach them. And my advice would be to reach out to those grassroots organizations, because that's the hardest part of reaching those families. And again, that was my concern. So I hope, that work is being done, and I look forward to reading and hearing from the other grant award winners at the next board meeting.
And so we have no shortage of children, because if we did, the tax would never pass. And I guarantee you, when everybody presented, they presented that we're going to go help the little poor children, and we got them out there, and they're falling out the sky, and we just don't have the resources to help them. And so now the resources are there. So we don't need to go shake a tree to find them. They are there. And so we have to go do it. And so, Carolyn Appleyard, I want to thank you. Because you have demonstrated your gift to not wanting to get paid, and you were for the children, and you've never went after a dime, but you've really helped us. And so I do appreciate you this last month, as we know we're in search for an executive director, and you've given us countless amounts of your time to this program committee and to the trust. So can't speak on behalf of the entire board, but on behalf of the program committee, Carolyn, thank you for your help. With that, nothing else, we stand adjourned.